What's up, everyone? Welcome back to part 2 in our 3-part series predicting the entire 2019 NFL season. I'm glad I waited to do the AFC on day 2 because of all this Antonio Brown drama that just happened, so that was kind of a little bit of luck for me. Yesterday I hit the NFC. I predicted all the division winners, the records for every single team, the playoff results based on those records, and today, like I mentioned, we're doing the AFC. Tomorrow, we're talking about season-ending awards like MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, et cetera, et cetera. But and if you didn't watch yesterday, kind of what makes my predictions a little bit unique is that I don't actually know what they are going into the process. I pick all 256 games week to week, and just whatever the records are, they are. And I don't go into it thinking, okay, this team's going to win that division, this team's going to win that division, these are my wild cards. I just pick the games, and I let the chips fall where they may, and I use those picks to determine tiebreakers, playoff seeding, favorites for those awards that I'm going over tomorrow. So, I try to keep it as unbiased and as in a vacuum as humanly possible because everybody has bias when it comes to sports, but that's the method that I find that works for me. And kind of before we get into all these individual divisions and records and playoff implications and all that, I do want to show you the odds for all these individual divisions as they stand today on MyBookie. Obviously, they've been updated a little bit with all the trades and the AB drama and all that. But, MyBookie is my season-long sponsor. You guys are probably pretty familiar with them if you've been with me for the last couple of years. I've been playing on them for the last 2 seasons. They've always been really fast to update, really reliable with payouts. I've never had any problem when it comes to that. And I bet my own money on there. They don't just give me sponsor money. I use my money on MyBookie, so I trust it. That you can bet on really anything when it comes to the NFL. They have prop bets galore. You can bet on records and division winners and award winners, and you can even bet on like the first rookie to get an interception this season. Really anything when it comes to the NFL you can bet on. And so these lines as they stand now are what they've got based on everything that's happened. Obviously, you've got the Patriots as the heavy favorites in the East, the Steelers as slight favorites in the North with the Browns narrowly behind them, the Texans as slight favorites in the South because that's still a strong division, and the Chiefs as a pretty overwhelming favorite in the West. Maybe the line doesn't reflect that as much as I think it should, but to me, they're the overwhelming favorite. And so it's pretty chalky in terms of lines for this game. There's not one that's super juicy, except maybe the Titans at plus 400. I feel like they're a little bit underrated in terms of their threat to Houston in the division. The Jags line at plus 225, I would probably stay away from that. I feel like 225 isn't really worth it for a team that I feel is not going to finish in the top 2 in the division, let alone winning the division. So, it maybe if that was like a plus 400 like what the Titans have, I would take that bet, but 225 isn't really enough for me. Plus 400 for Tennessee, though. I mean, if you're putting down $25 and you're getting back 100 on a team that I expect to win 10 games this year, that's pretty favorable to me. So if there was any bet in the AFC that jumps out to me, maybe not the most likely bet. I do think Houston's going to win the division, but just in terms of payout, that's a pretty good payout to me. And if you were thinking about betting on either Tennessee or maybe you did like that 225 line for Jaguars, or, maybe you felt like, the Browns were a little bit underrated and you think they're going to win the division. They're only at plus 140, but still, if you think they're actually going to win it and that's a safe bet, or really if you want to bet on any of the other AFC teams, you can go down to the link in the description on MyBookie, enter promo code Brett on your first deposit, and they will match it 100%. So as you bet down that deposit, they will double it, and they'll give you back whatever your deposit was up to $1,000. They'll give you an extra initial deposit, essentially. So, and anything you win with that deposit, by the way, you just get to keep as money. It's not like you're only getting credits or points or whatever. You're actually winning money with that bonus deposit. So really good deal. If you like any of these lines, if you see any bets either for the season long or for week 1 that you love, again, hit that link in the description, enter promo code Brett, and kind of make your football watching experience a little bit more entertaining. But with that, let's get into the actual records and the division winners that I predicted. I kind of alluded to it a little bit when talking about the lines. I do think that New England's going to win the East. Obviously, they're probably the safest bet in all of professional sports at this point to win their division. I think the Steelers are going to pull out on top in the North, but only narrowly and because of tiebreakers with Cleveland, who might be a more talented team, but I feel like in terms of coaching ability and quarterback ability. Like, Baker's great, but I still think Ben is the best quarterback in the division as of right now. I feel like Tomlin is the best head coach in that division as of right now. I think, if anything, the AB drama in Oakland has proved that maybe it was kind of addition by subtraction in terms of that deal. So even though they lost star players, I think they are going to be a better team this year. I have the Ravens just behind them at third in the division, but they'll probably be contending for a wild card all year. And then I've got the Bengals rounding it out at fourth. In the South, I do have the Texans to win the division. I did not have them winning the division before the Laramie Tunsil trade, but now I do because that was critical. I'll go a little bit more into that when we get to the South. I've got the Titans at second, the Colts at third, and the Jags at fourth. And then, of course, in the West, the overwhelming favorite, I've got Kansas City winning that division, followed by Denver, LA, and then Oakland. But let's kind of take on these divisions one at a time. We'll start with the South because I am a Texans fan. Might as well talk about them first. I think they are going to win the AFC South for the fourth time in the last 6 years. Full disclosure, a couple weeks ago, I thought Indy was going to run away with this thing. I felt like Andrew Luck and the Colts were a true Super Bowl contender. I felt like they were going to win 12 games, wrap up a playoff bye, and annihilate everybody else in the division. But with Andrew Luck retiring, and then with the Texans acquiring an actual left tackle for the first time in Deshaun Watson's career, and really for the first time since we had prime Dwayne Brown, kind of before injuries took their toll, and then he fell out of favor with the organization, got into a lot of fights with them, and then refused to play, and then they traded him to Seattle and all that kind of stuff. So, it's the first time we've had an actual left tackle since prime Dwayne, which was a few years ago now. So I'm feeling very good about Houston's chances to win the division because they have the best quarterback in the division by a wide margin at this point. They don't have the best head coach. I feel like Frank Reich is the best head coach, but in terms of quarterback talent, they are far above everybody else in the South. They still have incredible talent around Deshaun Watson. Offensive line isn't the best, but I feel like they can at least be average, which is still a huge upgrade. They have one of the best receiving corps in the league. Talking about DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Kiki QT if he can stay healthy, which is a big if. And then they brought in Kenny Stills to be their fourth wide receiver, which if your fourth receiver is Kenny Stills, that means your starting trio is pretty damn good because Kenny Stills is a good player. Not great, but he's good. Running back talent, Duke Johnson I love as a receiving back, one of the most versatile backs in the league, great receiver out of the backfield. He can run routes like a wide receiver, as evidenced by the fact that Cleveland played him at wide receiver for a few games when they were really hurting at receiver depth, and he did just fine there. Carlos Hyde they brought in. I'm not like a big Carlos Hyde guy, but in terms of just being a goal line back, somebody that can kind of bang it in between the tackles, he's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. So, backfield talent, not as good as some of the other teams in the AFC, but it's enough, especially when paired with all the receiving talent and the quarterback and a decent offensive line. People are going to say, what do you mean by decent offensive line? They just got a left tackle. There's four other guys that they have to account for. I understand that, but that's really what this whole offseason was about. They took Titus Howard. He's now starting at left guard and played really, really well at left guard in the preseason. Not so well at tackle, but he's not playing tackle, so I don't really care about that. He was really good at guard. Sharping was also really good at guard, but he's probably their backup swing guard at this point because I think they're starting Fulton at right guard. And Fulton was great in the preseason himself. He didn't give up literally a single pressure in the entire preseason before he kind of had that turf toe thing, but he's back with that. So, their interior three, if you include the swing guard position between Howard, Sharping, and Fulton, were really, really, really good in the preseason. Deshaun had all sorts of time. I mean, there was like one pass down in the red zone. I think it was in week 2 on their touchdown drive, their opening touchdown drive, where Deshaun had like 6 seconds of time in the pocket. And that was before they got Laramie Tunsil. So I really like Howard at left guard. I like Fulton at right guard. Nick Martin is, he's kind of average as a center, but I think if you have a good left tackle and a good guard duo, you can get away with having an average at best center. And then Seantrell Henderson, he's probably below average right tackle, but I think if you're going to have a below average anything, it might as well be one of the tackles that you can help out with chips and doubles with tight ends and everything like that. Like, if you have a strong interior and a strong left tackle on the blind side, you can get away with having a bad right tackle. So overall, the offensive line for Houston is way, way better than it was last year. And I'm going to have a film room topic on that coming out on next Monday as well, in terms of how the Laramie Tunsil trade completely transforms Houston's offense. But just know that I've thought it out. This isn't just me being a homer. Like, this is actual tape study proving that this offensive line is much improved. And if this offensive line is improved and if the receiving core stays healthy, there's no reason why Deshaun Watson can't be an MVP candidate. I truly believe that. You look at the numbers that he put up without a healthy receiving core and with a garbage offensive line and with questionable play calling, and he was phenomenal. So I think if you actually give him a support system, which for the first time in his career they have, he can be a transcendent quarterback talent for Houston. On the other side of the ball, the defense will suffer without Jadeveon Clowney. He was a big part of their defense, and I think that trade was terrible. Even as a Texans fan, like, objectively, Seattle completely stole J.D. Clowney from Houston. That was a horrible trade and a great trade for Seattle, but even without Clowney, I think the defense can still at least be average. You've still got one of the best edge rushers in the league in J.J. Watt. They have a promising young safety in Reed. They have a really good linebacking duo with McKinney and Cunningham up the middle that are great at stopping the run. DJ Reader's an underrated nose tackle. Whitney Merciless, now that he's moving away from his off-ball linebacker position back to a true edge rushing position, I think he can actually contribute more as a pass rusher this year. So, I mean, the defense isn't devoid of talent. It just maybe doesn't have as much talent as it used to kind of back in their early to mid 2000s prime. So, overall, when kind of looking at Houston, I think their offense is going to be incredible, especially because Deshaun Watson's going to have actual pass protection for once, and I think their defense is going to be average. And what that equates to in a division that no longer has Andrew Luck in it is a division title and 11 wins. Are they a true Super Bowl contender? No, probably not, because I feel like there's still some gaping holes on the roster that are going to hold them back. But at the very least, this should be a playoff team, and a very exciting playoff team at that. If they can maximize their mid-round picks the next couple years, because they don't have any first-round picks anymore, this should be a team to watch as Super Bowl contenders in the future. And as a Texans fan, at least, I am extraordinarily excited about that. Second in the division, I think if Tennessee, to me, Tennessee is a more complete roster than Houston right now, but they don't have the quarterback. And I still have my questions about Mike Vrabel as a head coach. Really, the only thing holding them back from being clear favorites in the division, now that Luck is gone, is the quarterback situation. Whether it's Marcus Mariota not being able to stay healthy, and even when he is healthy, he just hasn't been great. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is legitimately pushing him for the starting job, and we're talking about friggin' Ryan Tannehill here. Like, if you're in danger of losing your job to Ryan Tannehill, you got some improvement to do, like, just flat out. So I kind of highlighted it last year in that one game where he took 11 sacks from Baltimore. Like, he's still, all these years after being drafted in 2013, I think it was, second overall, he still has issues. Maybe it was 2015, whatever, he's been in the league for at least 4 or 5 years now. He still has issues in terms of navigating tight pockets, making quick reads under pressure, just overall decision making. And for a veteran quarterback now, because you do consider him a veteran at this point in his career, he's just not as developed as I would hope. There's not really that excuse anymore of like, oh, he's a young quarterback in his first few seasons, he'll get it. Well, we're kind of past that, and we haven't seen that same progression. There's young quarterbacks that were taken multiple years after him that have already lapped him, whether it's Wentz or Goff or obviously Mahomes and Watson. Even Jacoby Brissett, you could argue, has shown more growth from when he started in New England to where he's at in Indy now. You could argue he's shown more growth than Marcus Mariota even. There's a legitimate case to be made that Tennessee has the worst starting quarterback situation in the South, which is saying something. So I think if there's anything that's holding them back from being a 12-win team, It's going to be their quarterback situation. I love their offensive talent around the quarterback. I love their defensive talent, especially when Jeffrey Simmons gets back, probably about halfway through the year. Like, their defensive line is loaded. Their linebacking core is great. Their secondary, super underrated, and especially Byard at free safety, one of the most underrated DBs at any position in the entire league. This team is ready to rock and roll, but I just can't trust the quarterback. And that is what I think is holding them back. If I was going to do a parallel to any other team, I think they kind of remind me of Dallas, where the roster from top to bottom is fantastic. But can you trust Dak Prescott? Can you trust Marcus Mariota? Can you trust Ryan Tannehill? Can you trust Mike Vrabel? Similar to Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett has the longest leash I've ever seen for a head coach. I feel like Vrabel doesn't have that kind of leash. It just overall... This team is so close, but so far away from being a true Super Bowl contender. And while I do have them winning 10 games, that's really more from the strength of the roster and the strength of their front office to build that roster than it is from their coaching staff or their quarterback. Like, if you put Indy's quarterback situation and Indy's head coaching situation with this Titans roster, they're winning the Super Bowl. I can tell you right now, they would win the Super Bowl. But that's just not the reality we live with. So, we'll see what happens with Tennessee this year. Like, would it shock me if they take 2 steps forward and magically kind of develop and gel like they should have a couple years ago? Maybe, yeah, they can do that. Do I expect that to happen and for them to overtake Houston? At the moment, I don't. So still definitely a wild card contender. I actually have them as the 6th seed in the AFC, but as long as their quarterback is Marcus Mariota and or Ryan Tannehill, I don't expect them to get out of the wild card round. Behind Tennessee, I do have Indy at 8-8, and here's the thing with Indy. People are expecting them to go like 4-12, 5-11 now, which is ridiculous to me. Is their ceiling as high as it was with Andrew Luck? No. But 8-8 to me is like a worst case scenario for them. Like, I was actually kind of surprised that I had them at 8-8 and not 9-7 because, or even 10-6. Like, I was actually kind of expecting the opposite between Tennessee and Indy in terms of records, but just how I picked the games, that's what they ended up with. But, people are really dogging on Jacoby Brissett more than I think they should. 8-8 is the floor to me. I think they could very easily end up as a double-digit win wildcard team because he is not as bad a quarterback as people think. When he first got to Indy, yeah, there were a lot of problems. He took like 10 sacks against Jacksonville because his pocket presence was terrible. He wasn't making decisions. His eyes weren't staying down the field. Like, his tape was a mess. I did a whole episode on that if you want to go back to, it was the 2017 season. I think it was called like Welcome to Sacksonville, if I remember the name of that episode correctly. The whole episode was based around Jacoby Brissett creating problems for himself. He's not that kind of quarterback anymore. Watching him this preseason, it was like an entirely different player was in his jersey. His pocket presence was great. He was avoiding the rush while keeping his eyes down the field, making great decisions under duress. Like, this is an actual quarterback here. And that's why I think Indy still has a great shot, not just to challenge for a wild card, but maybe to even push for the division. Like, if I was just going to make picks in a vacuum, I would be more inclined to pick Indy than I would be Tennessee. Again, just because of how the games and the week-to-week picks worked out, I ended up going with Tennessee. But like, if I was not going to do that method, I would have more faith in Indy because I believe in Jacoby Brissett and I believe in Frank Reich. So, I think people are writing off the Colts way too much and way too soon. They still have a good defense. Not a great defense, but a good defense. They still have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They still have a dynamic receiver in T.Y. Hilton and a decent backfield with Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines. And that they're kind of doing a running back by committee thing. But, I like the weapons they've got. And I should mention Jack Doyle, too. He's a pretty good receiving tight end as well. I like the weapons. I love the offensive line. And the quarterback is fine. And I love the head coach. That is enough for me to qualify them as a very dangerous team. So, just stop bagging on Indy. They are not going to be a laughingstock. They are not going to be in contention for a top 10 pick. I would be very, very surprised. Actually, I would be damn near shocked if that happened. They're a better team than you guys give them credit for. And then in the 4th spot in the South, I have the Jaguars. Again, they'll probably be a better team than 5-11, but just their schedule is brutal. Their division like I mentioned, is brutal. All four of these AFC South teams are dangerous, and they've got to play them 6 times. So I think they'll go at best 3-3 in the division, and then their road games and their out-of-conference schedule, again, is also brutal. So it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up at 5-11. That's just kind of what I ended up with at the end of the season. My main thing with Jacksonville is their starting 22 is good. I have more faith in Nick Foles than maybe a lot of other people. Like I think their starting 22 is good. I think their run game is going to be incredibly dangerous. I think their offensive line is underrated, and their defense is still good. But, their depth is just horrifically bad. Like, once you get past the starters, they've got nobody. Nobody. And I was watching them in the preseason when their starters were out, and there was a lot of guys on that roster that would not make any other team but Jacksonville. So their starting 22 is great, but their depth is horrifically bad. And if they start taking injuries again this year like they took last year, this team's not going to go anywhere. They need everybody to stay healthy to have a shot here. And if they do stay healthy, yeah, fine. You can pencil them in for a wild card contention because I think their starters are that good. But can you rely on an NFL team in the most physical sport in all of professional sports with a high injury rate? Can you rely on them to stay healthy? Probably not. So it's rough for Jacksonville. I think they're a couple good drafts away from being true contenders. I think they will get there, again, like they were a couple of years ago when they had a deeper roster. Their depth has been chipped away at since then. But, they're a couple good drafts away from building that necessary depth to be a true contender, because right now they just don't have it. So, overall in the AFC South, again, I've got Houston going 11-5. Tennessee going 10-6 solely because of their quarterback situation. They should be better than that, but they're not. And then Indy going 8-8, which again wouldn't surprise me if they're better than that. And Jacksonville going 5-11. Moving on to the AFC West, this one no shocker. Obviously, I have KC at the top, Denver at 8-8. Chargers, maybe a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people, including myself at 7-9, and then Oakland bringing up the rear at 5-11. Starting off with KC, arguably the best team in the NFL, not just the AFC, but including the NFC too. They're right up there with New England and Philly in terms of being that elite trio of programs right now in the league. They've got, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes, at least the most dynamic quarterback. You could argue maybe Rodgers or Brady are better, but just in terms of the ability to totally put your jaw on the floor every single week, there's nobody like Pat Mahomes. And I've never seen anything like Pat Mahomes in terms of ability just to make absolutely mind-boggling plays. He's truly ridiculous. And so because of Pat Mahomes and because of Andy Reid, who's one of the best head coaches, not just in the modern era, but any era, you've got a first-ballot Hall of Fame coach, potentially a first-ballot Hall of Fame kind of quarterback if he keeps playing like he did last year. A really good offensive line, an incredible array of weapons with Tyreek and Travis, Hardman, who they just drafted, I think, in the second round, who's going to be dynamic for them. Probably their fourth or fifth most dangerous receiver is Sammy Watkins. And kind of like with Houston, with their fourth best receiver being Kenny Stills, if your fourth best receiver is Sammy Watkins, you're doing something right. So this offense is going to be incredible again. I fully expect them to be an incredible, historically good offense. And I think their defense is going to be better too, mainly because they got rid of Bob Sutton, who I cannot believe he stayed employed as long as he did. He was maybe the worst defensive coordinator in the league, and he overstayed his welcome by at least 3 years. I mean, it was unfathomable to me that he stayed their coordinator for that long, but he did. I think they made some good moves in the offseason, bringing in Frank Clark. Tyrann Mathieu maybe paid a little bit too much for Tyrann, but they really needed DB help, and he's a great locker room presence, a fantastic leader, super hard worker. So I think when you have him making calls in the secondary and then working with Kendall Fuller, who I think was their best corner last year, they've got some pieces, I think, on this defense that I really like. And I'd be remiss to not mention Chris Jones as well. So a pass rushing duo of Frank Clark and Chris Jones, some marquee DBs. I still have some questions about their linebacking core, but at the very least, they've got a lot of different talented guys they can churn through until they find a starting duo they like. I think they're going to start the year probably with Hitchens and Wilson, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ragland and Lee also kind of work their way in there. So, they've got some guy. They don't have a star linebacker, but they've certainly got a lot of guys they can try to work in and find a good combination that works. But, overall, this defense is going to be a lot better than it was, mainly because of Bob Sutton no longer being there. I think Steve Spagnuolo is a great defensive mind. I think he's a great game planner. I think he's a very good designer of pressures. It might take a little bit for this Chiefs defense to really come online. We might not start seeing them play really well until beginning of November, because Steve's system is notoriously hard to process, and it takes all of his defenses, wherever he's been throughout the league, it takes all of his defenses a little bit of time to gel in terms of communication and everything like that. But there's still a lot of talent here, and I think anything is better than Bob Sutton. So this defense should no longer be one of the 3 worst in the league. If they can just get up to between 16 and 20, this team is a Super Bowl favorite. Because that's all they needed last year with their offense. All they needed last year was just a below average defense and not a terrible defense, and they would have been fine. And I think this year they are going to have an average to below average defense, which is an upgrade. So overall, I've still got KC at 12-4. Second in the division, I've got the Broncos at 8-8, which a lot of people maybe expect them to be somewhere around 5-11, 6-10, but not me. I really, really think the Broncos are an underrated team this year. I think they're going to be able to rip off some wins, especially in Denver, against some teams that are going to finish with a lot better records than them. It is not safe to play in Denver. No matter how good or bad the Broncos are, that's one of the most intimidating and one of the hardest places to play in all of professional sports. And especially when they have this kind of defensive talent on their roster with this kind of defensive coach in Vic Fangio, one of, in my opinion, the 3 greatest defensive coaches breathing today. That is a very, very tough task for any team to do, including Kansas City. Denver played them pretty tight last year, and that was without Vic Fangio. So I think it would not surprise me at all to see Kansas City and the Broncos split their series 1-1 because of the coaching staff in Denver, the talent in Denver, and just the fact that Mile High is incredibly hard to play in. If, and this is a big if their offensive line plays better than what we've seen so far, if Mike Munchak, again, a legendary offensive line coach, if he can kind of get them to be average to above average, and at the very least, if he can just fix Garrett Bowles, this offense should be fine. They have a lot of underrated talent. Phillip Lindsay is dynamic at running back. Royce Freeman, I think, is a great counterpunch to Lindsay's speed. I think he's more of an inside zone, beat him up kind of runner. But when he was coming out of Oregon, I compared him to Jordan Howard, and I think he can be that kind of back for them. Cortland Sutton, I thought, was going to be a first-round talent. When he came out, they got him in the second. He's a kind of a prototypical X receiver for this system. And speaking of the system, they're going to be running a Shanahan-Kubiak-inspired West Coast offense, which is the system that Joe Flacco has been most comfortable in throughout his career. The best numbers he ever put up were under Gary Kubiak in Baltimore in this system, and they're going to be running the exact same thing, but with better personnel than he ran it with in Baltimore. He's got better weapons with Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders, who somehow looks totally fine after tearing his Achilles last year. Baltimore didn't have running backs like Lindsay or Freeman when he was in Baltimore. You could argue the Baltimore offensive line was better, but I don't necessarily think that Denver's offensive line is going to be terrible, especially with Mike Munchak coaching them. So, if you follow the narrative of Flacco being in a comfortable system with a great coaching staff and better weapons, and him putting up even not just record-shattering numbers, but just better numbers than he normally puts up, plus the defensive efficiency that I expect Denver to have, plus their notoriously good home field advantage, this team could push for a wild card. It would not surprise me. It wouldn't shock me if they're right up there with Tennessee and Indy all the way until week 17 pushing for a 5 or 6 seed. This team is way better than people think they're going to be. They make fun of Flacco and they say, oh, they got a first-year head coach, but they've upgraded a lot since this time last year. A lot. So, don't take Denver lightly. 8-8, like I said, could be a floor for them. I say that completely seriously. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, I think the Chargers might dip back compared to what people expect of them. A few months ago, I said that the Chargers were a sneaky pick to be one of the most talented and best records in the AFC. But now, fast forward to, post Derwin James injury, where he might not come back until November or maybe even later because foot injuries can be kind of tricky. Not to mention their offensive line with Okung out because of, I think it's a blood clot issue, if I remember correctly. But I remember he had a pretty serious health issue that might keep him for at least half the season, if not more. Their offensive line is looking absolutely terrible on paper. Their best lineman might be Pouncey, who they just locked up to an extension. And even Pouncey, he's not what he used to be. So I have serious concerns about their offensive line. I have justifiable concerns about their defense without arguably their most important defensive player in Derwin James. Their defensive line, or at least their front seven, is good with, Bosa and Ingram coming off the edges, and they got Jerry Tillery at defensive tackle in the first round, which was one of their biggest needs on the whole roster. And Tillery himself, I think, was a great value. He's going to be a monster for them. I love Jerry Tillery as a prospect. They got him at a huge value. Great pick by them long term. And their linebacking core is when they're healthy is pretty decent as well. But Derwin was the X factor for them because their linebackers, I don't feel, at least they're true linebackers, not the safeties they play at linebacker. Their true linebackers like Perriman aren't great in coverage, and Derwin was one of the guys that kind of covered up for that with his incredible versatility and coverage ability and run stopping ability off the edges too. Like, he was the guy that made their system work. And so playing without him for the first at least 2.5 months of the year, like that's a tall task. All the talent other than Derwin is great, obviously, but they're going to have to change how their system functions. And I have questions, not doubts, but I have questions about it. My main doubt, again, is on offense with the offensive line. Like, I get a lot of 2018 Vikings vibes from this 2019 Chargers team, where there's talent everywhere, especially on defense and especially at the skill positions. Even with Gordon sitting out, I still think Eckler is a fine running back. They have talent everywhere, but the offensive line was so bad in Minnesota that it ruined everything. And I have legitimate fears that the same thing's going to happen with the Chargers, where it doesn't matter that Keenan Allen's wide open. It doesn't matter that Mike Williams is dusting corners on the outside with his size and physicality. It doesn't matter that Eckler, I think, is a much shiftier and better running back than he gets credit for. If Phillip Rivers is on his ass because he can't throw anything off a 5-step drop or more, if he has to throw the quick game every single pass because the offensive line can't hold up, and if the run game can't get going because they can't open lanes, that's going to hurt them. Just like it hurt Kirk Cousins last year. Like, Kirk Cousins, they could only throw off 3-step drops because anything more than that, he would die. Like, their downfield passing game was severely hampered by their offensive line. And, when that hurt their ability to sustain drives, that tired out their talented defense, and all of a sudden the talent didn't really matter as much because they were gassed by the middle of the third quarter. So, a lot of team success depends on the offensive line, both offensively and defensively, and they don't have that right now. So when I was kind of picking these games week by week, I ended up at 7-9 because I was looking at all these great defensive fronts that I thought was going to absolutely murder their offensive line, and it's tough to play through. It's tough to win under those kind of circumstances. So, yeah, I have them at 7-9. Overall, the talent on that team is better than 7-9, but unfortunately, one of the areas where they are weak is one of the most important areas on the team. So it's unfortunate for them, but that's just kind of how I ended up on their record. And then after the Chargers, of course, I've got the Raiders in 4th at 5-11. And, I kind of just want to say this about the Antonio Brown drama. Good for Mike Mayock. Good for him for standing up for himself. And, I used to work at NFL Network, and I never got to work directly with Mike because he was always on the road. But I worked on Path to the Draft and with everybody that also worked with Mike. And, the number one thing that everybody always said was that he was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He always prioritized respect and timeliness and work ethic because that's how he operated when he was in TV. He respected everybody. He showed up when he needed to show up. He did his job. He never complained. Like he was a model employee. And so when he's the boss now, he expects all of his employees to extend that same respect that he used to extend to his bosses. And Antonio Brown's not doing that. You know, he's expecting some sort of special treatment because he's a star player, and that's not how Mike operates. He's going to fine you if you don't show up and you don't do your job that you're being paid millions of dollars to do. And so then when you throw a tantrum and you threaten a physical altercation with him, and again, I'm recording this before his press conference, so who knows what's happened in the hours since then. Like, yeah, you expect Antonio to get suspended, and it wouldn't surprise me if he got released, because if he's suspended, that voids the guaranteed money, and they wouldn't lose anything by just outright releasing him. And just knowing what I know about Mike, like, he prioritizes, in terms of team building, he prioritizes culture over everything. He prioritizes culture over talent, because talent can win you games, but culture wins you championships. And this is a dude that wants to win championships. So, you know, even just looking at his first round picks, you know, the Jacobs pick, the Furl pick, the Abram pick, like, he prioritized locker room leaders, hard workers. Hunter Renfrow, hard worker, locker room leader. Like, he picks so much of the Bama and Clemson guys because they come from strong locker room cultures that know how to win and want to keep winning. And that is counterintuitive to what AB is, which AB, he killed the Steelers locker room almost single-handedly, and a very talented team, much more talented than they were even this year in terms of Pittsburgh talent. Like, Pittsburgh was more talented last year, but they're going to be a better team because they don't have AB killing and shattering that locker room with his antics. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Mike just let AB go because, again, he prioritizes culture over talent. And in the end, I don't think he cares as much about AB's talent if it ruins the culture he's trying to build. And so that's kind of my general thoughts on that is, you know, I don't know why they traded for him in the first place because, again, it kind of goes counterintuitive to how they want to build their team. Maybe they were just kicking the tires on him, seeing if a change of scenery would mellow him out. Clearly it didn't. And, you know, now that he's suspended, if they can get out of that guaranteed money, he's probably going to be gone because in the end, they know they're not going to be AFC contenders this year. They know they have time to build a program, and why waste your time and why waste, you know, the sanctity of your locker room on a guy like AB if he's not going to help you win. So, yeah, I think Oakland's going to be 5-11 this year, but with or without AB, I think they would be 5-11. They play in a really good division. You know, their road schedule is tough. I think they'll be able to rip off a few key wins, but I don't think this team is going to improve until their culture improves, which will take longer than just the 2019 season. They'll get there. You know, I'm a big believer in Derek Carr. I'm a big believer in really their whole coaching staff, and I'm a big believer in their front office, but they need more time than just 2019. I think it starts with cleaning up the locker room. I think it starts with establishing a culture of winning, and you build incremental steps. They have some young talent I like, but long-term, like they're still a couple years away is how I see it. And then moving on from there, speaking of AB, let's go to the North, which I do have Pittsburgh winning at 10-6, even though, you know, Lev Bell's no longer there, even though Antonio Brown is out of the building. I think they're going to be a better offense. I think they're going to be a better team because culture matters. And I think Mike Tomlin, if anything, I think we all kind of owe Mike Tomlin a huge apology because we always thought that he wasn't great at cultivating a winning culture in Pittsburgh. If anything, it's amazing that they were able to win as many games with the culture that he was trying to build that was being torn down by his star wide receiver. Like, the fact that all of this crazy was contained and that none of it got out and that the locker room was as semi-decent as it was, even with Antonio in there, is, like, incredible. Like, that's an achievement to me that none of this got out until AB left the building. So, you know, hats off to Mike for at least doing what he could with the situation he was in. And I think, you know, the Steelers locker room as it is more unified and more focused and more ready to put in the work as, I guess, quote unquote underdogs than they ever have been. You know, a lot of people are kind of giving this division to Cleveland when I don't think they've earned that yet. If anything, I think the coaching staff in Pittsburgh, the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, And the overall culture in Pittsburgh is still superior to everybody else in the division. And while maybe they don't have as much pure talent as Cleveland, and maybe they don't have youth on their side like Baltimore, like this is still to me the best team in the AFC North. Like Juju is no slouch. He's not AB, but he's still a great young receiver. James Conner is not Le'Veon Bell, but he's still a good young running back. He runs extremely hard. I mean, he pile drives linebackers in the hole. Like he fits kind of what the Steelers want to be, or at least he fits what the Steelers want in their starting running back, which is just a bruiser that can physically dominate teams and wear them out until the fourth quarter and kind of close games out for them. He fits that profile. They have a really talented tight end in Vance McDonald, who I think is a really underrated tight end. They have some young receivers behind Juju that I'm really excited for, especially on deep balls in James Washington and Deontay Johnson. Both of them have excellent speed. Ryan Switzer, I think, is going to be like the ideal slot receiver for them. A chain mover now that Juju's moved outside and he's no longer their slot receiver. The offensive line is still intact. Alejandro Villanueva is one of the best left tackles in the game. Marquise Pouncey is one of the best centers in the game. David DeCastro arguably is the best guard in the game. So, there's still a lot of talent on this Pittsburgh offense, even without AB and without Bell. But because I think there's going to be so much more focus in meeting rooms. There's going to be so much more unity within that locker room. I think they are going to play better. I think their culture is going to elevate the talent rather than the talent dragging down the culture. And that matters a lot. And on defense also, just might as well throw that out there. They improved on defense talent-wise because they finally got an actual successor to Ryan Shazier and Devin Bush, who is going to be a star for them. I love what I've seen from him so far. Like, I had him as a first-round talent. I wasn't sure if I would have traded it up as much as they did to snag him in the top 10. But so far, I mean, he's kind of proven me a little bit wrong on that by overperforming even what I thought he was capable of. And I still had a pretty damn high grade on him. I had a first-round grade on him, just not a top 10 grade, but he's been playing like a top 10 pick. So, that was a great job by them just pulling the trigger, knowing that it was a thin linebacker class and they needed to get a fast, rangy inside linebacker that could play that Shazier kind of style for them. They didn't hesitate. They gave up assets. They got their guy, and so far it's paying off. So great job by them. Justin Lane, I was a really big fan of him at Michigan State when he was coming out. I think he's going to benefit from sitting behind Nelson and Hayden, maybe coming in some nickel and dime packages for them. But overall, he's a very high upside corner, really good hips, really good feet. I'm a sucker for Michigan State guys because I always think they're very well coached coming out. There's some young talent on this defense that I'm really a big fan of. And remember, they led the NFL in sacks last year, despite not having any true superstars. They have really good players, but no true like Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt level superstars, and they still led the NFL in sacks. So a very underrated defense. I think the offense is going to be better this year. Like, there's no reason for me to think that the Steelers are not the favorites to win the AFC North. At least to me, they're the favorites to win the AFC North. That being said, Cleveland can challenge them for it. I have them both at 10-6, but I do have Pittsburgh, taking the division to the tiebreakers. But, Cleveland is still exceptionally talented in their own right. They have a great young quarterback in Baker Mayfield, one of the best receiving cores in the entire league, bar none, with Odell and Landry, and, Njoku's an incredibly talented tight end. Their running back trio is just incredible. There's a lot of talent on this offense. I have more questions about their offensive line, especially at tackle. I feel like they're going to have issues at tackle this year, even if the interior line is good. I do have some legitimate worries about their edge pass protection, which might come back and bite them a little bit. On defense, also incredibly talented. Their defensive line is gross, like just absolutely disgusting. The linebacking core, I think, is very underrated. And the secondary, I think, is going to be pretty good, too, especially with Denzel Ward as the number one corner, who I think is fast evolving into one of the best, if not the best, young corner in the league. He's right up there with, like, Jalen Ramsey and Marshawn Lattimore to me. I think he's going to be a true shutdown corner for them. So, there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, other than at the offensive tackle position. So it would not shock me if Cleveland pushed for the division. At the very least, was in the 5 and 6 seed discussion the entire season. I just have a little bit of questions about their offensive line, and of course, we're not 100% sure, what Freddie Kitchens is going to bring to them at head coach yet. But I was excited about, when he was the interim last year. I was excited about what he brought to that offense. He completely remade that offense in just a few weeks, and so I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt so far, but we're just not 100% sure. So we'll see where they end up at the end of the year. I think they are going to be a good team. I don't know if they're going to be an elite team like some people project them, but I think that at the very least they are going to be a good team, which for a lot of Browns fans, that's all they really want. They just want to be a good team. They want to make it back to the playoffs and at least show signs of progressing towards that perennial contender status that they haven't had in decades at this point. So that's how I see the Browns shaking out this year. And then right behind them, I've got the Ravens. And here's the thing with Baltimore: they very easily could outperform 8-8. They very easily could be a 10-6, 11-5 division-winning type of team. But they are the hardest to figure out quarterback situation in the NFL to me. I don't know what Lamar Jackson is going to be yet. He has a lot of talent around him. I mean, they've added so much speed to this offense. With Justice Hill, Marquise Brown. There's so much young. Oh, and the Notre Dame kid that they got. I'm blanking on the name. They got him in the 4th round. Super big, huge physical, big body receiver for them to work on the outside. They have really exciting young tight end, Mark Andrews, that I equated to kind of a young Jason Witten last year. So, overall, the offensive talent around him at running back and at receiver and at tight end is as good as Baltimore has had in a very long time. And the offensive line, I think, is still good, too, especially with Ronnie Stanley and Marshall Yanda, two of the best at their positions. Yanda, one of the best, period, to ever do it at guard. This offensive line should still be fine. My question is just with Lamar Jackson. Can he take that next step as a passer? We know he's a great runner. We know if they're running options or if they're running zone reads or anything like that, or if they're running RPOs, he can be effective. Can he be effective at literally anything else? Because the Chargers showed last year that you can design a game plan to stop that offense if that's all they are capable of doing. So that is my main question with them. It's not a doubt, it's a question. Can Lamar take the next step? All we have to go on right now is tape from last year, and the tape from last year, at least as a passer, was not super great. Just flat out, it wasn't super great. There were some good throws, in there, here and there, especially that one to Andrews against the Chargers in their first matchup, I think was a beautiful ball. But we just didn't see that consistently. So, can Lamar be that great passer, or at least just be an okay passer? That is what can elevate this team up from 8-8 up into more like the 10-6, 11-5 range. Defensively, I think they're going to be fine. I think people made a little bit too much of a big deal about their defensive losses in free agency. I think they're going to be just as good as they were last year. Losing Mosley hurts, but I think their young linebackers that they had behind Mosley can still get the job done pretty well. They've always been kind of a pass rush by committee ever since Terrell Suggs kind of left his prime. Their pressure really became less about winning with 4 and more about winning with 5 or 6 creatively. And I think they're still going to be able to do that. Between Judon and McPhee and Williams and Pierce and Dalen Mack, who's a young rookie they got in the 5th round, who I think fits their profile perfectly as an interior defensive lineman. They got him at a pretty good value. Jalen Ferguson, I think, is healthy again, who was one of my higher-rated edge rushers in the class, but he slipped to the 3rd round due to off-the-field issues and injury issues. But he fits their system perfectly. He's basically just another Matt Judon. So they have a lot of pieces in this front 7 that fit their system perfectly, and I don't really expect them to take a step back when it comes to that. And their secondary, I think, is still good too. Humphrey's one of the best up-and-coming young corners. Again, like I mentioned earlier with Ward and Ramsey and Lattimore, he's right up there with them too. Going into his 3rd season, he's phenomenal. Earl Thomas, one of the greatest free safeties to ever walk this planet. Jimmy Smith is, as far as number 2 boundary corners go, you're doing pretty well if you got Jimmy Smith on the other side. He's still a big, lanky, physical corner that I think can match up pretty well with your prototypical X receiver out there. And Tony Jefferson at strong safety I think is very underrated as well. So the secondary is extremely strong. The front 7 is still strong even after their free agency losses. So this team is ready to go. It's young, it's inexperienced, but it's talented. And if Lamar Jackson takes a step forward, if Ozzie Newsome was correct in his evaluation of him a couple drafts ago, like this team should be set up nicely for a very deep playoff run. It's the biggest question in the AFC right now is what's going to happen with Baltimore, specifically what's going to happen with Lamar, because their records could be wildly different based on how he plays this year, which is why I have them at 8-8, because I don't know what to make of them at the moment. The talent is there, we don't know. And then beyond Baltimore, I've got the Bengals rounding out the AFC North in 4th at 5-11. This will probably shock nobody because they've already got health issues. AJ Green's hurt. He's not coming back for at least the first few weeks of the year. The offensive line still has questions, at least on the right side. I'm more confident than a lot of other people on the left side. I think the left side's going to be fine. Not great, but fine. But the right side, I think, is a total dumpster fire. So that's going to get Andy Dalton hit a lot. If your starting right tackle's Bobby Hart, you got problems. And with AJ Green out, your best offensive weapons are Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd, and we're not really sure what else. Tyler Eifert, I think when he's healthy is good, but he's almost never healthy, so we'll see how many games he lasts this season. But you can't really rely on him to stay healthy for a full year. John Ross has not really materialized into what we thought they would be getting with a top 10 pick. He certainly had a better sophomore year than freshman year, but unless he takes a massive step forward in year 3, I'm going to have some pretty big concerns about his future with this team long term. So there's a lot of questions about this offense. There's even questions about Andy Dalton. Like this is a huge make or break year for him as well. It's kind of put up or shut up time for him. Like, can he elevate the rather average to below average talent around him to play above that level? Can he play like a true franchise quarterback and elevate average talent into being good talent? Can he make up for a shaky offensive line? Can he make do with only Tyler Boyd and John Ross? And I guess Auden Tate would be their number 3 guy. Can he make do with that receiving core? Can he maximize Joe Mixon to his highest potential as a receiver? So far in his career, he hasn't been able to be that kind of quarterback. And if he's not that kind of quarterback this year, Cincinnati might be looking for a new one next year. They've already got Ryan Finley on the roster, who, in my opinion, was severely underrated as a prospect. They got him in the 4th round. I thought he would go in the 2nd, and he had a pretty good preseason too. So maybe they start kind of kicking the tires on Finley in the last half of the season if they feel like Andy's not getting it done. So there's a lot of questions with this Bengals offense, and there's a lot of questions with their defense too. Is this defense just going to be Geno Atkins, William Jackson, Jesse Bates, and 8 other dudes? Because that's kind of what it was at times last year, was just those 3 and 8 other guys. So I don't really know what to make of Cincy long term, but short term, especially with AJ Green hurt, I don't think they're going to be a very good team. When AJ gets back, if he is able to be semi-healthy, they might rip off some wins in the second half of the year and go more than 5-11, but without him, it's going to be rough. I don't think the offensive line is good enough. I don't think that Andy Dalton is good enough himself to elevate his offensive line and get the ball out quickly and make quick decisions. I don't think that Joe Mixon can do it all by himself. I certainly don't think that Tyler Boyd can do it all by himself. I am pessimistic about John Ross living up to a top 10 pick kind of billing. And the defense, I think, other than a few stars or at least future stars, has a lot of problems. So this team is probably 2 years away. They've got some young talent I like, but they're 2 years away, and they might be a quarterback away from really kind of getting themselves back into contention here. It's unfortunate if you're a Bengals fan, because I think a lot of them are staring at this season like they're staring down the barrel of a gun, but it might be a necessary evil in order to see what you really got in Andy Dalton in kind of a make or break year, and to see if maybe you should be looking at a replacement for him, whether it's Tua Tagovailoa. I'm just gonna say Tua. Maybe you're looking at Tua out of the corner of your eye all year. Maybe you're looking at Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm, even if maybe you want to go for like a late 1, early 2 kind of guy, or maybe even, and I'm just throwing this out there, maybe even you believe in Lincoln Riley so much that you're looking at Jalen Hurts as a second or at least a day 2 kind of prospect long term for you, because I think Jalen Hurts is infinitely more naturally talented than Andy Dalton ever has been or ever will be. I'll save a lot of the draft talk for next spring, but just if you're a Bengals fan, kind of prepare yourselves to be watching a lot of college football this year, because I think this time next year, you're probably going to be looking for a new quarterback. And with that, let's move on to the final division in the AFC, the AFC East, the easiest and most predictable division in all of professional sports. It's pretty easy to say the Patriots are going to win it. It's the same prediction that people have been making for 20 years now. The Patriots are the best team in the East. They always have been, and as long as Tom Brady's playing, they always will be. I do think that they're going to go 12-4 this year, largely because of the division they play in. I have them going 5-1 in the division, with their only division loss being at the Jets, who I'll get to in just a second. But this is kind of just how it's been for the last 2 decades. The East being a relatively or just flat out terrible, a relatively weak or just flat out terrible division. And the Patriots being sometimes the only good team in that division kind of feasts on the terribleness at the bottom of the barrel, which then elevates their record, which then gives them home field advantage in the playoffs, which they then convert into AFC Championship appearances and Super Bowl appearances. And I think we're going to see the same thing again this year, where they feast on the bottom of the barrel. They go 5-1 the division. That gives them a huge leg up over everybody else when it comes to playoff seeding. And next thing you know, they're hosting an AFC Championship game, as is tradition. It's an endless cycle, and I think it's going to happen again this year. On offense, I think a little bit too much has been made about some of the shuffling in personnel. I understand that Gronk retired, Hogan's no longer there, but I think Josh Gordon, if he's on the field, can still give them a dynamic receiving option. I think Demaryius Thomas, as long as he's fully recovered from his injury, I think can be a good number 2 for them. I really like that young receiver they got, Jacoby Myers. Even though N'Keal Harry's now on IR, I think Myers is going to be a really, really interesting and productive young weapon for them. And of course, Edelman is still going to be Edelman. He's still going to put up a lot of catches as well. So the receiving core, I think, is fine. It's not the best Tom's ever had, but I still think, like, by Patriot standards, it's good. It was only a few years ago that they were looking at a starting receiving core of like Brandon LaFell, Edelman, Danny Amendola, and Aaron Dobson. Now they got Josh Gordon and Demaryius Thomas. Like, it's an upgrade no matter how you slice it. I don't care age or anything like that. Like, they're just flat out better receivers than Brandon LaFell and Aaron Dobson. So, all is not lost in New England. The offensive line, I think, is going to be fine. I know that David Andrews situation hurts them a lot, but I have a lot of faith in Dante Scarnecchia to still keep this unit to be one of the best in the league. Isaiah Wynn's back from his Achilles injury. He's had a full year to recover from that. Maybe he won't be as quick as he was at Georgia, before he got hurt. It might take him a little bit of time to kind of fully get back in the swing of things, but I still think he was an exceptionally talented tackle prospect when he was coming out of Georgia. So I have a lot of faith in him as their starting left tackle. And Shaq Mason is still one of the best right guards, or actually just one of the best guards, period, in the league. Like, I have a lot of faith in this unit. I think they're going to be fine. Plus, Tom gets the ball out so fast. They're going to be okay. I really have no worries about this offensive line, even accounting for the Andrews IR situation. They'll be okay. Sony Michel, exciting young running back. Damian Harris as his backup, like, that's a really, really talented 1-2 punch for them. And of course, James White is their third down back. This is one of the most dynamic backfields in all of the NFL. And I think that's going to be really their bread and butter is just pound the rock, pound the rock, pound the rock. On third down, throw it to James White, throw it to Edelman, take a couple deep shots to Josh Gordon, throw some, jump balls to DT in the back of the end zone, put up 35 and go home. Like that's going to be their formula, and I think they're going to be executing that every single week. This offense, for as much panic as there was this offseason, they're going to be okay. And this defense, I think, is also going to be okay. Like, I understand the free agency losses have people a little bit concerned, but if there's anybody that I think can take a whole lot of question marks on defense and build a scheme around it and have them firing on all cylinders by mid-October, it's Bill Belichick. Like, traditionally, the Patriots have always started out slow because Belichick doesn't really know what kind of team he has until October, and he said as such. They change wildly from a system perspective. Like, they'll change their base front, they'll change their base personnel, they'll change the coverages they call, they'll change everything they do if it doesn't work in the first month. And so I think regardless of whatever talent gaps we perceive, their best edge rusher is probably Michael Bennett at this point, who is not what he used to be. Whatever talent gaps we perceive them to have, they will adjust and they will completely redo their system. And by halfway through the year, they're going to be a good defense again. So don't pay attention to, whatever bad results they have in the first part of the season, because that's just not going to be the defense they have when they go to the playoffs. It's always been that way, really. And I don't think anybody should be surprised by that at this point. So overall, when it comes to the Patriots, I think, even if they do start slow, they're still going to end up at 12-4. They're still going to go 5-1 the division. They're still going to have a playoff bye, and they're still going to host the AFC Championship game. Like that's just what they do. I think predicting anything else at this point, after the mountain of evidence we've seen to the contrary over the last decade, is just foolish. Like it's a never-ending cycle. And then beyond the Patriots, I've got the Jets at 8-8. I think they are an underrated team. I think they're going to rip off some wins against some perceived to be superior ball clubs, especially at home. I'm a really, really big fan of Sam Darnold. I think he's going to be one of the best young quarterbacks in this game. I think they've added a lot of offensive talent around him, especially with Le'Veon Bell. Say what you will about the cap number attached to him, but he's a dynamic, one-of-a-kind running back, and they needed a dynamic, one-of-a-kind running back. I'm a big fan of Robbie Anderson when he's healthy. He's kind of starting the year a little bit banged up, but I think he'll be okay. I think he's playing week 1. They got Crowder in the slot as well, Quincy Enunwa. Like this, they are not devoid of weapons. And when they get Chris Herndon back from suspension, which I think is in week 5, like he was a dynamic young athletic tight end for them too. So like overall, this offense I expect to actually be pretty damn productive. The defense, I think, is still lacking a true edge rusher, but the interior pass rush with the Williams brothers should be tremendous. I'm a huge fan of that defensive line. Henry Anderson's no slouch either, more of a run stopper than a pass rusher, but their 3-4 rotation with Leonard Williams, Quinnen Williams, Steve McClendon, I think, is their starting nose tackle, Henry Anderson at the other 5 technique. They are loaded on the interior defensive line, which causes problems for quarterbacks more than anything. I think any NFL quarterback will tell you that they hate interior pressure a lot more than they hate edge pressure because they can't step up away from interior pressure, especially a quarterback like Tom Brady. He's not as mobile, and so he can't get away from interior pressure like maybe some younger guys can, like Josh Allen or Deshaun Watson. So I love that they built this defense inside out. The C.J. Mosley addition at Mike linebacker, again, maybe a little bit expensive, but they really needed a great run-stopping Mike linebacker, and he definitely fills that role. The Avery Williamson injury hurt a lot. I think he's a very, very good complementary inside linebacker for them. But I will say I'm a huge fan of Blake Cashman, and I think he is going to get on the field more because of that injury. I think he is their best coverage linebacker by a mile, and I think he's also extremely instinctive against the run, too. A little bit lighter build, so he's going to be kind of relying on, McClendon and the Williamses and Mosley to kind of keep him clean in between the tackles, but he flies to the football. He's got great instincts, super fluid hips, very explosive. And at worst, I think he is going to be their answer to James White out of the backfield because he's one of the only linebackers, not just in the division, but in the entire conference that can actually cover James White. So really, really good addition there. The secondary outside of safety is a huge concern. I don't think they have any good corners other than maybe Brian Poole if they put him in the slot, because he played pretty decently in Atlanta in the slot, but it's not like he's an elite slot corner. Tremaine Johnson, he ever since he got signed there, has not really lived up to the contract. Their number 2, I guess at this point, is Darryl Roberts. It just like outside corner for them is a mess. Adams and May at safety, great safety tandem. Jamal Adams, one of the best safeties in the league. Marcus May, when he's healthy at free safety, I think is a pretty good player. Very rangy, very instinctive, got ball skills, all that. So, it's a great safety duo, but just at corner, they are hurting, to say the least. Do you have really any confidence in any of those guys to cover some of the elite receivers that they're going to be facing in the AFC? Probably not. Even just looking at their schedule, week 2, they're going up against the Browns trio with Odell and Landry. They're screwed. Week 3, they got Josh Gordon coming to town. Like, no way. Week 4, they're going up against all those weapons they got in Philly. They can't cover them. They got Amari Cooper. If he's healthy, he's going to be coming to town in week 5. They have nobody who can cover him. Let's see. Do they play? I'm going through their schedule right now. Well, we don't know if Antonio Brown's going to be on the Raiders, but they got the Raiders coming to town later in the year with AB and Tyrell Williams and Hunter Renfrow. By the time they play the Bengals, AJ Green should be back on the field with Tyler Boyd. Like they can't cover any of those guys either. So I have legitimate questions about this secondary and how, I don't want to say it will drag down the defense, but it's certainly going to cost them a lot of points because they need a corner, specifically a boundary corner, and they need one bad. It's the biggest weakness on the roster to me. But, overall, this Jets team is going to be probably the best Jets team that they've had in a while. Like, even better than the one that, won 10 games a couple years ago with Ryan Fitzpatrick and pushed for a wild card spot. Like, I think this team is going to be better than that Jets team. Even if the record maybe doesn't show it, I think they are going to be a better team. And I think Jets fans are going to see a lot of excitement and growth in their young quarterback. I think they're going to see a future that actually looks promising for once. And, maybe this is still considered part of a rebuilding year for them, but it's going to be a very positive year for them. And overall, I think that's all Jets fans want, is they just want to see some positive trends as Tom Brady's career winds down, so that maybe they can see a window to take over the division for the future. And I think they're going to get that. So same kind of thing with the Bills. I think the Bills are going to be a better team than they were last year, even if their record doesn't reflect it. I still think the defense is going to be nasty. One of the best coached defenses in the league, even if it's not the most talented defense. They're very, very well coached. I think the addition of Ed Oliver is going to be one of their franchise cornerstone picks for the next decade. He's a supremely talented defensive tackle who, he's got Aaron Donald type of talent. He's not as polished as Aaron, so it's going to be on that coaching staff to get him there. But if there was any defensive tackle that I think could reach that level, just based on pure athleticism, it's Ed Oliver. And their linebacking duo of Edmonds and Milano, I think, is extremely underrated. It's one of my favorite young linebacking duos in the league, right up there with Smith and Van Der Esch in Dallas. And I guess you could throw in Warner and Quan from San Francisco in there too, but I think Edmonds and Milano are better. They're still hurting a little bit at edge rusher. Their best one's probably Jerry Hughes. Shaq Lawson has not turned into the player that they hoped he would be when they drafted him. It wouldn't surprise me if this is probably his last year on the team. But, the secondary, I think, is also really good. I really love Tre'Davious White, really good young corner for them. The safety duo, highly underrated with Hyde and Poyer, super instinctive, great ball skills, very versatile. They both have corner backgrounds, so they'll stick them in the slot every now and then, and it works to perfection. Overall, I really, really like this defense. Not a whole lot of superstar talent other than maybe Edmonds and Oliver, just in terms of natural talent, but very, very well coached, very well schemed, great game plans every single week. And I think any offense that goes up against the Bills defense, especially, if you talk to any fans of teams that played against Buffalo last year, like, they're not fun to play against. Like, they are grimy and dirty. Not dirty like cheap, but just like they roll around in the mud with you, and they kind of drag your offense down to their level and make you fight for your life. I love watching this Bills defense because they play so much better than the talent on their roster suggests they should be playing at. Just a very, very well-coached defense. On offense, there's some things to be excited about. I think Josh Allen, we are going to see him take a little bit of a step forward this year. Really what we want to see, not just the physical talent, but we want to see him control that talent with touch and placement and decision-making, and not just, oh my God, he can throw the ball 65 yards. Like, we just want to see him take a little bit of that next step forward. Not a huge step, but just kind of show some progress. And I think we will this year. I think he has more weapons to work with than he did last year. Like Cole Beasley, I think, is a really underrated slot receiver. He's going to be a third down machine for them. John Brown, really, really good deep threat. Can't really do much else, but just in terms of pure deep threat ability, he's up there. Zay Jones has been a little bit disappointing for me in his first 2 seasons since he was drafted. I expected him to be a lot better than he is, considering how productive he was in college. But Robert Foster, I think, is kind of the opposite. Like, not a lot of people expected anything from Robert Foster as a free agent, myself included. Like, I think it was a 6th round grade on him coming out of school, but he has far exceeded that grade, and he was actually pretty productive in the back half of last year when he developed that chemistry with Josh Allen. I expect him to kind of take over as a starting X receiver for them this year. And I don't want to say be super productive, but still be productive for them. Probably somewhere around 800 yards, 6 or 7 touchdowns, which I think Bills fans would take in a heartbeat. And then they got Andre Roberts as their number 4. I guess maybe you could count Isaiah McKenzie as the number 4, but he's really more of a gadget guy to me. But, overall, this receiving core isn't terrible. It's probably just average at best, but it's not terrible. The offensive line, the picking up Morse from Kansas City was big for them. Getting Spain from Tennessee was pretty big. Not huge names added, but solid. And I think at the very least they'll keep Josh Allen from running for his life on every single third down, like it seemed like he was last year. Deion Dawkins is probably an average left tackle, maybe a little bit below average, but he's certainly not Julian Davenport, who, literally led the league in pressures given up in Houston last year. So if you're a Bills fan, count your blessings that you don't have to deal with that. And I think the Cody Ford pick that they brought in to start at right tackle for them, opposite of Dawkins, was really good too. So again, not a whole lot of star players on offense, but a whole lot of solid players, which is enough for me. Just having a solid core of talent around Allen is enough for him to kind of take a step forward. There's not any true, maybe the only thing close to a star that I think they're going to have is Devin Singletary, who's a young running back that I love, hence why they released LaShawn McCoy last week. But he might be the only star on the whole offense, but I think because of all the solid talent that they have there, it'll still be enough. I think it will be enough of a core around Allen to allow him to progress and develop. Again, the Bills are probably a year or 2 away, I think, from being a playoff contender, but because they don't have any truly glaring weaknesses, they just don't have a whole lot of strengths. But because they don't have a lot of weaknesses, this team is going to be annoying to play against. I think this is the kind of well-coached, solid team that will rip off some wins against some teams that, on paper, they should not beat. But because of the strength of their coaching staff and because of their lack of any true exploitable weaknesses, they're going to be that kind of annoying team that you really don't want to have on your schedule. Especially if you're like an AFC contender. Like the Bills are like the one team where they're the definition of a trap game. You're going into it, you're thinking, okay, it's Buffalo. They're 3-11. We got this in the bag. And then next thing you know, like what we saw with Minnesota last year, they absolutely dumpster you by halftime. It's a feisty team, man. They're nasty. They're not super talented, but they're nasty. And, in the NFL, sometimes that's really all that matters is, are you nasty? Do you play hard? Are you well coached? Are you in the right spot where you're supposed to be? And that's pretty much what Buffalo is. And then moving on to the final team in the AFC in the last division, I've got the Miami Dolphins, who I expect to not just be the worst team in the AFC East, not just the worst team in the AFC, but the worst team in the entire NFL. I think it's pretty clear that we're in full tank mode. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing the role of tank commander because I think once they traded Laramie Tunsil, it became pretty clear that they saw all they needed from Josh Rosen, and he's not the guy. I don't think that they saw enough from Rosen in training camp or preseason or really any part of this year since they acquired him to convince them that they should build around him. If they were convinced that they were going to be building around Rosen, A, he would be starting week 1, guarantee it. B, they would not have shipped off the only good pass protector on their entire offensive line. I think they are blowing the whole thing up. They're starting from scratch. They're saying we're going to get as many picks as we possibly can. If we don't get first overall, we're at least going to be close enough to it that we have all this draft ammo we can use to move up and get first overall. We can get Tua, we can grab some offensive linemen, we can grab some weapons, and we can build from there. But they are not trying to win this year. They are pulling a Philadelphia 76ers, and we'll see if it works. I will say this about it. I kind of respect the dedication because so many teams in the NFL are so content to just kind of sit around, 6-10 to 7-9 to 9-7 every single year, even if they have no shot of winning a Super Bowl. The curse of mediocrity in football is a real thing. And so I respect the dedication of them saying, we're not going to do that. We could go 6-10 if we want to. We can maybe try to be a mid-level team if we want to, but we're not going to do that. We are going to commit to getting better for the long term. We're going to ship off the assets we can ship off. We're going to get our quarterback in the top of the draft, and then we're going to start all over. We're not going to be mediocre. We're going to be bad so that we can be good. I respect that dedication because it takes balls. It takes confidence from your ownership that you're not going to get fired in the middle of this plan. Because that's what happens sometimes. You go through a couple bad years that you're going to have to go through. You get fired. They bring in somebody else who takes all of the assets and works off all of the hard work that you put in the last couple years, and then they get all the credit for the rebuild. I hope that's not what happens in Miami. I hope they give them time because it takes time for a tank to pay off. It really does. And it's going to be painful for Dolphins fans this year. I can already tell you that much. But I think they know what they're in for. I think they know what's happening. I think they're on board with it because they don't want to be mediocre forever. I think they know that they need a new quarterback. They need a new offensive line. They need new weapons. They need some more defensive pieces beyond just, Xavier Howard and Jones and Wilkins. Like they need more. They need assets. They need high picks. They need everything. And so I think the Dolphins fan base is cognizant of that. And so it's not going to get ugly in Miami because they're aware of it going in that they're rebuilding. It's not going to be like the Giants last year where everybody thought they were going to be a wild card contender and then they were awful. Miami knows what they're in for. And that matters a lot, I think, in terms of mindset. But I wish them luck in this because it's going to be brutal. It's going to take some time, but I do think it is going to pay off. But this team's going to be awful. I mean, they're the least talented team in the NFL. They're even less talented than the Cardinals were last year, and that's saying something. But I think the absolute ceiling for Miami is like 4 wins this year. They'll probably get 2 or 3, but at most they'll get 4. Like it's that rough. But all you can do is just get through it, grit your teeth and bear it, and hope for the best for 2020 and 2021. And with that will wrap it up for the division winners and wildcard teams. As you can see, I've got New England at the 1st seed, Kansas City at the 2nd seed at 12-4, because I have New England winning that game against Kansas City and getting the tiebreaker. So even though they're both 12-4, I've got New England at 1st seed, Kansas City at 2nd seed, Houston at the 3rd seed at 11-5, and then Pittsburgh narrowly winning because of tiebreakers for the 4th seed. And then at the 5 and 6, I've got Cleveland and Tennessee, with Cleveland at the 5 seed because I think they're going to own the tiebreaker over Tennessee for that. So that's your number 1 through 6 seeds. And then while we're at it, we might as well pick all of these totally fake made-up playoff games too, since we've already got the seeds established. I've got Houston taking down Tennessee in Houston in the wild card round, and Pittsburgh taking down Cleveland in the other wild card game that is a divisional rematch. So Houston and Pittsburgh move on. So Pittsburgh goes to New England in round 2. I think New England wins that matchup. And Houston goes to KC. I don't think there's any way that Houston wins that game in Arrowhead. So Kansas City wins that game. And then we've got a rematch again in the AFC Championship of Kansas City at New England this time. Last year it was New England at Kansas City. And I actually think Kansas City wins that one. I think they both kind of trade home AFC Championship losses. I think Kansas City wins that rematch, goes on to the Super Bowl where they face Philadelphia. And I'll predict who I think wins that Super Bowl between Philly and Kansas City tomorrow when I do the MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, et cetera, picks. I'll reveal my Super Bowl pick for that one. But I think it's going to be Kansas City against Philadelphia in the Super Bowl after an epic road AFC Championship win by Pat Mahomes that officially crowns him as the golden child of the NFL. Madden curse be damned, Kollmann curse be damned. This dude's the truth, and he's taken the Chiefs to their first Super Bowl in decades. The kid's amazing. So I'll reveal who I think wins in that Reed versus Reed disciple matchup tomorrow. Again, take a look at all these lines. If you want to bet on any of these division winners, or even just want to bet on the Week 1 games, or prop bets, or rookie bets, or anything like that, again, hit that link down in the description to take you to MyBookie, our season-long sponsor. They've got every single bet you can possibly imagine. And of course, again, if you use that promo code Brett at the deposit, you will get a 100% deposit bonus that as you bet with your deposit, they will literally double it. So you're essentially getting a whole bunch of free money based on whatever you deposited initially, up to $1,000. You'll just get that doubled as you bet with it. And then any bet you win with that free bonus deposit, you just get to keep as if it was real money. They just treat it as an actual bet. If it pays out, you get money, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can cash out, you can keep betting, you can do anything. So it's a great deal, essentially just giving you a whole bunch of money to play with. And again, if you were going to bet anyway on any sportsbook, you might as well get something free out of it. So again, hit that link in the description, enter promo code Brett if you're interested in that. And I will be back tomorrow with all my awards picks and my Super Bowl pick. And of course, also on Monday, I'll be back with another full Film Room episode. My subject is changing a little bit in light of some of the trades and the drama that's going on around the league. I'm going to be saving the Xavier Rhodes and Julio Jones episode for after their matchup instead of before. But I think you guys are going to like this subject coming up. It's really near and dear to my heart. Don't want to spoil it too much. But yeah, I think you guys are going to like it. So stick around for tomorrow's picks and the Film Room episodes next week. And until then, later.